Recently, I've been playing through the Yakuza games, and I've been having a great time so far. The endearing characters, fun combat, and addictive minigames make even the weaker entries fun to play. But the weakest part of these games are usually their stories, as once you look past the compelling character drama, you'll find plenty of plot contrivances, underwhelming reveals, or moments that are straight up dumb. And you can find all of these issues on full display in Yakuza 4. Currently, I've only completed the games from 0 to 5, and out of these, 4 is the one with the worst writing. I could talk about the pacing issues, moments where characters act out of character, and the excessive amount of plot twists that make it really difficult to take the story seriously. But what I want to talk about is a particularly infamous twist in the game's latter half. It's the one Yakuza plot twist I see criticized the most, and it's easy to understand why when it's such a terrible twist in both concept and execution. And in this video, I'm going to be explaining exactly why this twist doesn't work and how it damages the story of Yakuza 4. This video will have massive spoilers for Yakuza 4, so if you haven't played the game and want to go in blind, I'd recommend closing the video. But if you don't care about spoilers and just want to watch the video, I'll try to explain the context of the twist well enough so you can understand my arguments without having played the game. I'll now take the time to briefly go over the story leading up to the plot twist, so if you don't want to recap, you can just skip to the next section. 25 years before the events of Yakuza 4, two Yakuza named Saejima and Majima are given a mission to eliminate the Ueno Seiwa clan, who will be meeting at a ramen restaurant to celebrate the chairman's release from prison. Majima obtains multiple revolvers for the two of them to use, but on the day of the hit doesn't show up, leaving Saejima to carry it out himself. Once Saejima enters the restaurant, he's able to take down the entire clan by himself, after which he's arrested by the police and spends the next 25 years on death row, with the guilt he feels over murdering these people weighing down on his conscience. But as we learn later on, that isn't the full picture. While most of those Ueno Seiwa men are dead, Saejima isn't the one who killed them, as his revolvers were loaded with rubber bullets that only knocked them out. In reality, they were killed by Isao Katsuragi, one of the supposed victims of the Ueno Seiwa hit. Katsuragi creates this elaborate plan to kill almost every member of his own clan and make Saejima take the fall, allowing him to get rid of any competition for his rise to power. Through multiple degrees of separation, he was able to inform Majima and Saejima's clans about the upcoming meeting and supply the two with guns loaded with rubber bullets, an experimental technology that can knock people unconscious. After Saejima leaves the restaurant and the Ueno Seiwa men are starting to wake up, Katsuragi proceeds to finish them off with real bullets, only sparing the clan's chairman, who's still asleep. Shortly after, he has a conversation with Suguichi, another Yakuza who's aiding Katsuragi in his plan. Katsuragi tells Suguichi to shoot him somewhere non-vital, that way he can push the lie that he risked his life to protect the chairman. And since Suguichi has infiltrated the Tokyo police force, he relays this false narrative to his boss, Munakata. But once Munakata reads his report, he instantly notices the inconsistencies and figures out Suguichi's plan. But rather than having him arrested, Munakata then makes a deal with Suguichi. He will allow this report of his to become the official story. All he needs to do is secure Munakata a meeting with the Yakuza he works for, allowing him a connection to the criminal underworld. The Ueno Seiwa hit is the most important moment in Yakuza 4, being the event that sets the entire story into motion. So it's a big problem when the twist recontextualizing this event is so terribly written. I'll start by explaining why it doesn't make sense from a purely logical standpoint. While Yakuza has some scenes that push your suspension of disbelief, they are generally grounded in real-world logic, and the way rubber bullets are used don't feel grounded in any way. The idea that you can knock people unconscious by shooting them with rubber doesn't make much sense. I imagine they would be very painful, but not capable of knocking someone out. Also, the amount of time which rubber bullets can incapacitate someone is very inconsistent. Some members of the Ueno Seiwa woke up shortly after Saejima left, while others stayed unconscious. Katsuragi wakes up quickly despite being one of the last people to get shot, and the chairman is still unconscious even though he was shot right after. This whole scene is so convenient, as this plan could have easily gone wrong. If the other Ueno Seiwa woke up before Katsuragi, his plan could have failed. And if the chairman woke up to catch Katsuragi in the act, his plan definitely would have failed. It's only through pure luck that the scenario went in Katsuragi's favor, and this is not the only example of this plot twist being driven by contrivance. What bothers me even more is how Saejima couldn't tell that something fishy was going on. For one thing, he doesn't notice that the rubber bullets look very different from regular bullets. I've seen the explanation that he wasn't experienced with firearms, which is not only unconfirmed by the story, but even seems to contradict it since Saejima uses these guns pretty effectively. But even if we were ignoring this, it's a massive stretch to believe that Saejima wouldn't know what bullets look like. The other problem is that Saejima doesn't notice the lack of blood in the ramen shop. He shot multiple people, so he should have realized how none of them are bleeding profusely, yet he's none the wiser. I've seen the explanation that he was caught in the moment and wasn't thinking straight, which I could forgive if he missed a small detail, but missing something this obvious makes no sense at all. It's especially hard to believe when he shoots the Ueno Seiwa chairman. Not only was he looking right at him, but seemed pretty calm as he pulled the trigger. He also slowly walks out of the ramen shop, giving him plenty of time to notice that the place isn't covered in blood. You can't say that he wasn't thinking straight when the scene itself shows otherwise. And what makes this plan even more convenient is that Munakata just happened to be really corrupt and willing to let this slide. Suguichi couldn't have had any idea about his true nature, so it's just another example of Katsuragi's plan working due to variables outside of his control. But besides all of these issues with the scene itself, it also has a negative effect on Katsuragi's character. Katsuragi is clearly meant to be an intelligent person, arranging this elaborate plan to eliminate the Ueno Seiwa and pin it on Saejima. Yet he didn't even consider how easily Saejima could have become suspicious, how it could have gone differently if he didn't wake up at the perfect time, and how easily someone could see through his deception. This plan is so flawed that even the story calls it out, specifically in the scene where Munakata points out how obvious this plan is. This may seem like it addresses the issue, but it just adds to my question of how Katsuragi came up with a plan this flimsy, as it creates a lot of dissonance with how intelligent he is supposed to be. The only possible reason I could think of is him being younger when he came up with this plan, but that shouldn't excuse him making a mistake this massive. The story needed to either create a better plan for Katsuragi or to provide actual reasoning for why he didn't consider these holes in his plan. But the character who's damaged most by this twist is Saejima. Besides how stupid he is for showing no suspicion about the hit, it also undoes one of the most important parts of his character, that being his guilt for the people he's killed. As we see in the Colosseum scene, the burden of murdering the Ueno Seiwa clan weighs down on Saejima, and it very much gives the impression that Saejima's story would be one of redemption or coming to terms with his past. But thanks to rubber bullets, this potential plot point goes completely wasted. It ruins that Colosseum scene since we now know that he didn't actually kill anyone. But the worst part about this reveal is that Saejima basically has no internal struggles from here on out, when in reality he should still have plenty of mental baggage. He ruined the lives of himself and his loved ones. Also, he could be a pawn in someone else's power play. I still think his character would have been better if he killed the Ueno Seiwa, but it's not like there's nothing left to be explored here. But after Saejima's part, the story does nothing with the guilt that he would realistically have. have. All that matters to the writers is that Saejima didn't kill anyone and therefore has a clean slate. The rubber bullets twist already gives Saejima little to work with in terms of internal struggles, but what potential his character had left was completely wasted. And if all of this wasn't enough, Yakuza 4 uses the same rubber bullets twist again. It's in a less important scene, but it manages to be even more unbelievable. In the game's final chapter, Munakata gives Arai an order to take Haruka hostage, giving him a picture of her and a revolver. Arai then tells Munakata that he's done taking his orders and shoots Munakata with the gun he gave him. But once we get to the confrontation at Millennium Tower, Munakata reveals that he's still alive and that the gun he gave Arai was loaded with rubber bullets. My first issue is that rather than shooting Munakata with his own gun, Arai decides to use the one that Munakata gave him. He already has a gun of his own, so it just seems like an unnecessary risk to use a weapon that isn't his. But he also doesn't properly examine the gun before using it. As if he did, he should have realized that these aren't real bullets. You'd think that someone who's experienced with firearms wouldn't be this careless when it comes to killing someone. The obvious reason is so the story could progress, but it doesn't make sense from a character perspective. As for the shooting itself, Arai should have immediately noticed that Munakata isn't bleeding. It's difficult to tell from the camera angle, but the way Munakata's head falls back makes it look like he was shot in the head, meaning that Arai would actually have to be blind to not realize that there isn't a hole in Munakata's head. But even if it wasn't a headshot, it's a massive stretch to believe that Arai would actually be fooled by this. As for Munakata himself, I still have no idea what he was planning here, as it's not completely clear whether he was expecting Arai's betrayal or if he just survived completely by accident. It seems like he was expecting this, but he shouldn't have any reason to suspect Arai prior to his betrayal, as he's been pretty loyal to Munakata. There's also the question of why Munakata gave Arai rubber bullets. If it was to trick Arai into revealing himself, that just seems extremely risky when Arai could just use his own gun. But if this was unintentional on Munakata's part, that doesn't explain why he gave Arai rubber bullets without telling him. I used to think this was clearly a trap for Arai to reveal himself, but the more I think about it, the less sense it makes. Despite being much shorter than the previous rubber bullets scene, it manages to be even more nonsensical. While Yakuza 4 has plenty of writing issues, the presence of rubber bullets is one of its largest. Not only being a ridiculous plot twist and concept, but having a negative effect on the story and characters. They can't be so easily removed due to their importance in the story, but if a story can't exist without a nonsensical twist that damages its plot and characters, then I think it's time for a rewrite. It's really frustrating to see so many people brush off this twist when it ruins so much that Yakuza 4 set up. It's arguably the worst part about this game's story, and I hope I've decently explained why in this video. If there are any mistakes I made or information I missed, let me know in the comments, since I want to make sure I'm not missing anything for these analytical videos. I'm planning on doing more Yakuza videos in the future, including an in-depth critique of Yakuza 4, so subscribe if you'd like to see more videos like this. Anyways, that's about it. Thanks for watching.